Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Finstep Asia Edge Tipping Point series, where we'll talk to entrepreneurs and founders in the FinTech and Web3 world. It's an extension of the Token Byte series, right? So today I have the pleasure and honor of having Sophie Guibaud, who is the co-founder of Fiat Republic, and she's also been a FinTech rockstar for the last few years. So we're going to talk FinTech, we're going to talk crypto rails, and we're going to talk about how it has been for her in her entrepreneurship journey. Welcome, Sophie.
Thank you, Musheer. I'm very happy to be around.
Right. So, the audience we have is spread across Asia and beyond. They look at this transition of Web 2 to Web 3. But most importantly, I think for me as a founder, that what I've done, I've learned, but I want to listen and have our audience understand entrepreneurship journeys. And so I would love to hear from you about your journey in general, like how, you got into financial services, FinTech, digital assets, broadly. So I'd love to hear that story.
Yes, thank you. So I started actually my career in finance.
Okay.
First 5 years I was in M&A.
Nice. Okay, so TradFi proper.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
And at that point, so I was advising large transactions, but I was also helping a little bit on fundraise for startups. And it's how it all started, like this interest for startups. Then went into leverage buyout. Then became a VC for a couple years.
Yeah.
2008, 2010.
Nice.
And after that, basically, investing in startups was just not enough for me in the sense that I wanted to get my hands dirty.
Sure.
And it's at this point that I just decided to join Startup Journey. I joined the founding team of HelloFresh in the UK.
Yeah.
That was the first move. Did everything from zero to, the launch, and then spread out across the UK.
Sure.
And after a few months, just figured out that, e-commerce was interesting, but it was not where my passion lied. And my passion lied since the very early stage into finance, right?
Okay.
And I got lucky to have my mentors that had invested in a startup. His name is Bankable.
Yeah,
he told me, look, they need some help. Go and join them. It's what I did. So it was almost 15 years ago now.
Okay.
And it was the very first wave of fintech in the UK.
Okay. Yeah.
It was a bank. So it was first a prepaid card platform that moved into a banking as a service platform. And that was the beginning of my journey in banking as a service. And now I've spent the last literally 15 years banking as a service. Bankable first, so launching fintechs.
Of course, yeah.
Then Fidor, launching a digital bank in the UK.
Yeah.
That was a whole new experience.
I'm gonna double down on that later, but go on, please.
Probably the scariest experience of my life.
Sure.
I need to launch a bank. Wow. But really loved it. Then I basically started selling the technology of Fidor to enable banks to launch neobanks.
Sure. Yeah.
And then joined OpenPaid for a few years.
Yeah.
And then launched my own company with my co-founders. And we have launched Fiat Republic.
Yes.
And we are basically providing fiat rails for crypto platforms.
Very, very interesting, right? So I'm going to double down on Fidor, but it's interesting. You went from finance, you went into investment, and you went into neobanking, and now you're in the payment rail. So you almost touched everything that has happened in financial services end to end, from VC to enabler to founder, and both banking, finance, and crypto. The UK has, for the last couple of decades, been a leader when it comes to fintech regulations, especially the FCA in terms of principle-based regulations, which now a lot of other regulators followed up. However, it has also been a strong place for neobanks and the others, and Fidor being who they are and a well-known name. What was that experience in terms of building something which at that stage just followed the global financial crisis, right? So you're now in this place where people were disillusioned with banks. And fintech was picking up, and then you are at this cusp of building something. So what was that excitement like? What was the customer response? What was the response from competitors? How did you find that generally?
Yeah, so so Fidor had launched back in 2008. They were the first bank in, I think, 130 years launching in Germany. Yeah. And back then it was so innovative and the reason why they launched the neobanks, so they definitely saw a spot when it comes to community banking, and it was Matthias Kruner, the CEO, that had seen that. Yeah. And the response was really strong because at this point, people just didn't feel heard by their bank. Yeah. And community banking was the answer for that because actually Matthias was hanging out in the community very often. And me too, when I launched the UK, we were asking them about new products to be launched, what pricing to put in place, what's fair, etc. And it was a whole new model. And so what also Fidor had done pretty differently from, I would say, others, even other neobanks, knowing that other neobanks came later, is that since the beginning, they launched their own platform. Yeah. Because there was no other provider that was API-based. APIs was not in the fintech industry back then. It was
very, very new, yeah.
Exactly. And so they developed their own platform that we ended up, selling to other banks. But I think neobanks were definitely an answer to what customers didn't have then, which was being heard by their banks, and also just a digital experience. Like the banking space hadn't caught up yet with the phone and what we were expecting. Yeah. We were consuming books differently now. We were consuming music differently.
You had Facebook, Twitter at that time just launched, right? Yeah.
Exactly, but we were not consuming banking differently. So that's why there was such a strong traction on neobanks.
And how did you see it, talking to the communities, Germany and UK, are they similar? Did Fidor find that to be similar or different? So this is proper mainland Europe experience versus a British experience, which is still part of the EU at that stage, but yeah.
No, so I would say that people are attracted by the communities in general have the same spirit in it, but the consumers are different. Sure. Germany being a super heavy savings country, while the UK is more on the credit
consumption
part.
Side, yeah.
So it were not the same people or the same products we were pushing. Although back then we were also in a market where interest rates were actually high. So I actually remember. So it's nothing compared to right now, but I remember launching these 3% saving bonds, and that was
popular.
Very popular because back then it was where you could make kind of the most money, except stocks market.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting point I wanted to highlight, and would love your comment on it. We are talking about two markets that have a long history being next to each other, right? The Anglo-Saxon conversation, as it were, as an extension with Germany. However, and a lot of times people may put the consumer behavior, attitudes, etc., to be very similar, and we see that happen quite often in Asia, where companies coming from outside of Asia, doesn't matter which part of the world, largely from say Europe or North America or even otherwise, they tend to try to pigeonhole all of it into one bracket, Asia, right? As an example, I think it's a classic point to say that two markets that from the outside it looks so homogeneous and similar has such different elements. So the importance of treating individually, right? So what was that lesson for Fidor, you would say?
So that's an excellent point. And having done quite a lot of in-depth research and also launch around that, going into the specificities of each country, consumers are managing and their money kind of differently, but it's also they are used to different payment methods. So, for example, when you're in the Netherlands, everybody use Ideal. If you launch and you don't have Ideal, you better just have a savings product and give lots of money, give good rewards, because people won't be using your services. And I also remember quite many neobanks that arrived in France, and it's still the case actually, not providing local IBANs. And local IBANs is a big deal, specifically with governmental services.
Sure.
So, for example, in France, we get paid back for our when we go to the doctor for our bills extra on our bank account. You can on the interface you cannot put something else than a French bank account, which is totally unfair because we are in Europe, we are on SEPA. You should be able to put any kind of IBAN. But the truth is that IBAN discrimination is a thing. So if you're gonna launch a neobank, and on top of that say, oh, but I want to own the salaries of my users. No, it's not going to happen if you don't have the French IBAN.
Yeah.
So like each market always needs to be dealt with independently. I would say that for a proof of concept, to show a little bit traction, it's okay to launch like your existing product and to be like, you know what, I want to taste the water first. Let's launch, let's go fast and see whatever it takes. But in the long term, it's absolutely impossible for me to have a one-fit-all approach of, what I have done is so great. Let me launch it somewhere and users will get like used to it and deal with it. No, they won't, because there will be competition, and thank God there will be competition because it just raised the bar higher for the consumers.
Fair. And I think that's an important point in terms of tailorizing. Knowing the local regulatory environment is massively important, and structure, as it were. Now, coming to your journey from that perspective of working in banking, working in investment side of, from a VC, and working for a startup as part of the initial launch team, but then going on to become a founder. So what drove you to, take up this entrepreneurship journey?
Yeah, so I think I was always an entrepreneur. It's just I never made the leap in the first years.
Sure.
Because if I look back, everything I have done was very intrapreneurial, right?
Yes,
HelloFresh, I launched it for Rocket Internet.
Yeah.
Well, Bankable was early stage, but we positioned it, and I was kind of the right hand of Eric, and Fidor. Basically, I arrived in this very German bank to be the first recruit for the UK, and actually launching this whole new service and so on. So for me, it was just like finding the right opportunity to launch the right idea and the right funding team as well.
Nice. So you wanted to launch it, but what would you say are like three big motivators to saying, right, I've been working for somebody, now I'm going to work with somebody and launch my own startup. What helped you take that tipping point, inflection point?
I feel it's the repeated experience where I wanted some things, or I believed that something should be done one way, like and not being able to be the one making the last call, right?
Yeah.
And entrepreneurship has its difficulties that we kind of all know, but the pros is definitely that in the end you are giving the directions that you want for your company, and even when you get investors, those investors invest in your thesis, so they are always here to help you, to support you, to also challenge you, and it's very it's what we expect from smart money, right? It's what VCs do. But in the end, they trust you and they trust your sentiments, instincts, because you know better, because you are solving a very specific problem in which you have like the experience. So for me, it has been the realization that if I wanted things to go in the way I believe it should be, there was no other way.
Yeah, sometimes entrepreneurship is the only pathway in solving and trying to do what you need to do in a faster way, right? Before we talk about the lessons of entrepreneurship, I think I want to talk about this compelling idea that you said, hey, I need to solve this, and I need to be the one working with a few others in solving this. So what was that pain point that drove you to wanting to set up Fiat Republic? And how has this journey of Fiat Republic been? So, but first talk about what was that pain point that drove you into the market?
Yeah, so out of like these 10 years of experience in banking as a service, and also the acceleration of the crypto market, what was really obvious was that crypto platforms couldn't get bank accounts, right?
Yes.
Either from a corporate perspective to manage their own money, but also for fiat on-ramp.
Correct.
I was like, us as a team, we were keeping on hearing that, like crypto platform coming to us and telling us, oh, we have this problem. Can you get us a bank account? Can you get us a bank account? And it became obvious it was like a massive opportunity. Sure. But it also became obvious that the way to do it was by focusing. So there are a lot of propositions in the market that provide payments for different segments of companies, right? Like a kind of one-fit-all approach. I don't believe in that, and my co-founders don't believe in that either. We really think that specialization is the way forward to really solve the problem.
Okay.
And by setting up Fiat Republic, basically, we thought that we created a consortium of crypto platforms to be able to change the dialogue with banks.
Okay.
So crypto-friendly banks, but also tier one banks, but also with the regulator. And we have made ourselves the advocates of regulated crypto platforms to get those reliable rates that they need.
And how has that been as an engagement with the licensed FIs and this issue of banking plus providing on-off rails has been, it's not just something that virtual assets crypto firms have been facing in the recent past. It's something that regulated fintech firms were facing a few years ago, right? Not just in one part of the world. It was a global conversation where banks were like, too much risk, we have these concerns, AML, we have other issues, or the investment is too much, the ROI may not be high with these startups. So how are you having those conversations, which are difficult conversations, and some of these concerns may be justified from a bank's perspective, even if it's regulated firms. How has that dialogue changed? Have you seen that approach from the regulated banks and providers change much, or is it still a struggle and almost a case-by-case basis, or they're more comfortable when they're talking to crypto firms now?
So that's a very good question. I think I would like to start by answering this, that by setting up Fiat Republic, we are solving a big issue for banks.
Yeah.
Because we are collecting, first of all, we are collecting data from our crypto platforms on which we have full visibility and that we can feed back into our banking partners. So that's the first thing. Second thing, we are the regulated ones. Yeah. So the risk is on our license and not on the bank license.
Okay.
Right? So it means that we enable them to touch crypto flows and to make money out of it, but by being the one taking the risk on our license.
Okay.
The third point is that we are an aggregator of those flows. So we are the client of the bank. Our clients are not the clients of the bank. And so that's also solving a big issue of noise of, like, currently we have around 35 customers. A bank would have had to onboard 35 customers, right?
Yeah.
We are solving this issue. We are doing a very stringent audit, yearly audit plus on-the-spot audits. So but we are really like being this single access point for crypto flows for banks. So that's what we are solving on this end. Now, to your point of as the conversation changed, the truth is that it goes back and forth.
Okay, it depends on who we're talking to,
So it depends on the crypto cycle to be very transparent on how it's going, but also on who is at the who's the team of those banks, right? And the teams can change, and
correct,
so sometimes, as a result, the policies can change, and so I would say it's really about making sure that you engage with many stakeholders within the bank, and you really develop those strong ties. this full transparency that really enable you to maintain the relationship even when the strategy changes a bit. From a regulator perspective, so we have a EMI in the UK and we have a EMI in the Netherlands, FinTech registration in Canada and a Finstep registration in the US. So we are definitely regulation first. And by the way, we believe it's the only way to make crypto to the mainstream, by being regulation first and having those conversations. We have found the conversation with the regulator generally good. They understand our model. We haven't had pushback on that. And generally, yes, it's a model that they are used to, and they also understand that crypto platform needs to be served. But what I think and what I keep on seeing, because we provide fiat on-ramps and to some extent some corporate accounts, but our main use case is not corporate accounts just for corporate accounts. We would provide corporate accounts for people taking fiat on-ramps, right? So we have still a lot of people coming, oh, can you give us a corporate account? And I think it's definitely something that needs to be solved by regulators, because right now we see, specifically in Europe and actually also in the Middle East, regulators starting putting the right framework in place for crypto, for end users to be served properly, and also to be safe, etc. But the problem is that crypto platforms have difficulties accessing to banking just to even receive the funds of their investor or to pay for their payroll. So
you're talking about business accounts here, right? Not even client money accounts here.
So they are totally underbanked. And I believe that unfortunately, without a strong push of regulators to their banks, that's not something that's going to be solved.
Yeah, and I think that's an approach that some of the forward-looking regulators, including in the UAE where we are today in Dubai, is very helpful. Where it's an engagement of conversation with the banks, encouraging, once somebody's getting a license or a virtual getting a license, looking to get them back because you are regulating them. And the same approach I saw in Hong Kong when it came to the FinTech environment, where the banks were not banking, and then the regulators kind of worked out a way where you could enable banking, and the virtual banking environment in Hong Kong, the license is one of the key elements was for financial inclusion of businesses, because Hong Kong's high inclusion on the retail side. Do you see a few markets where, say, we mentioned the UAE, where it's just positive developments when it comes to engaging financial services industry, broadly the banking side of things, to enable fiat on-off ramps with crypto firms? What would be the other regions where you're seeing this dialogue starting and becoming more positive? Let's put it that way. Where are you seeing that? In
Europe at the forefront. So we
is this MICA driven or
yes.
just outside? Okay.
Yes, MICA driven. I think there has been a big a strong understanding by regulators that if they put that in place and facilitate business this way, they will attract a big part of the market. And it's all the more the case when you see some regulators are making some step backs, such as, for example, in the US. So what we are seeing right now is that many US platforms are actually seeking regulation in Europe to be able to operate. So they open offices in Europe, get the license, and then will benefit from MICA next year. I think it's the most impressive initiative that has been put in place when you see all the markets you're accessing by just taking one license. But the truth is that also in the Middle East many things are happening. So we were this week at the Dubai FinTech Summit, and although it's a FinTech Summit, there were lots of crypto representation. We see many platforms launching, there was Bitpanda announcing their launch yesterday. And what I really like here is that I see that in the region, the countries definitely want to be at the forefront. So they're really putting the competition up, which actually will benefit the whole crypto industry.
Yeah, and look, MICA, for those who are not aware, is the markets in crypto assets regulation that covers all of the European Union and is going live in phases. The first phase being transitions in the local economies or nations for crypto firms, and then you go into the full regs later in a few months' time, right? Now, what I wanted to highlight, and it's a very good point with regards to how regulators are looking at this, and how the Middle East in general and Dubai has been a good example of that, of having robust regulations, but also reviewing it from a business perspective, plus linking it to the economy. To a certain extent, the Singapore model, right? Which is, we want to have strong, robust regulations, which are global in standard, can get the biggest names to come in on the financial services side, but also work with the industry to kind of enable business rather than necessarily SG. And I think that's a big point of what you're saying, and that may become in a competitive world, it's becoming a competitive world in terms of regions having that as an advantage to attract businesses, not just regulations. So regulators need to have a bit of a sense of how it impacts the economy and how they can enable the economy almost, right? Yeah.
That's paramount, right? And I think actually like that's the countries that get that are the countries that will get it right. It's like using regulation and compliance to enable business instead of like taking the step back of being, I'm scared, oh my God, I need to put like those framework in place before like it all goes wrong. It's very much needed.
Very much needed.
But in the end, like making just things easy for companies to come, the benefits are huge for your country.
Yeah, that's great. Now I want to move, taking a step back. We've spoken about what you've been doing, but I want to touch a bit on the entrepreneurship journey now as a co-founder. What were what have been, like, say, the top 3 or 4 things that excite you about being a co-founder and running a company?
That's a good question. Well, so first of all, what I said earlier, that like being able to really have an impact on the direction of the company.
Sure.
Building something from the ground up.
Correct.
I mean, like in the early days, a couple of years ago, I was with my backpack on all events and like signing every time between 1 and 3 clients at each event, and that's
a like, good ROI in events. Credit to you in terms of the hustle, but
that's why I'm keeping on doing it, right? Getting to choose the people I work with, really, like, so we have built the team from 0 to 34, right?
Wow.
So
it's impressive.
So that's choosing your people would be like my thing, and having an impact in general, solving a problem that I see on the market, and really trying to help benefit the whole ecosystem. Really.
Amazing. And I'm gonna flip that and say, what have been a few things? Could be 2, 3, could be 100 things you did not expect and had to adapt as you got into entrepreneurship. Oh, this I didn't expect, or oh, this is more challenging than I thought. What are the few things that you found
for launching a company?
Yeah, as a co-founder.
Yeah. I don't know if there was anything I didn't expect. I expected it to be tough, and it's tough. Maybe I didn't expect to enjoy as much like the freedom of putting in place what I want.
Okay, that's amazing. And the other question is your 3 co-founders, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And typically, single co-founders is a full freedom deciding everything. When it comes to 3 co-founders, there's when you're doing decisions, new products, company direction, broader hiring, budgets, office space, color of the chair, whatever brand of the chair, coffee, etc. Multiple things, right? Are very, very varied. So how have you guys found that balance? What are the, if you had to give tips for entrepreneurs who are looking to start, or potential entrepreneurs or budding entrepreneurs when it comes to working with co-founders? What is the secrets, or what are the ingredients for a healthy relationship for not just for yourself as co-founder, but very most importantly for the company to grow?
I think it's about, making sure that you have the same lifestyle and kind of work ethics. Since the beginning, that's a very important point, because like when you get to find your co-founders, you are here in quite the long run together. So that's very important. Making a point on communications, making a point in giving feedback, and correcting things like when something is not, you feel something is not right. So it's really like about communications mainly, I would say.
And I'm assuming differences in opinion is healthy, right? A lot of people try to think, no, you should have differences, but
of course. I mean, if you don't have difference in opinions, you don't have like a counterbalance of different ideas. And I believe that if it's the case, then except if you're always right, but who is always right? You know what I mean? So difference in opinions is paramount to actually bring the company to every time the next stage. And that's why I make a point on communications, because actually communications and being able to voice your differences in opinion and actually have healthy debate is probably the most important thing.
And early on, right? Because later on, once you go through a decision and you start say, oh, I thought this, but I didn't say it, is a big pain.
Oh, that's not possible. If you do that, that's on your own mistake. If it goes wrong, it's your own mistake.
Correct.
It's nobody else.
Yeah, and I agree. I've seen a lot of co-founders struggle because they don't voice it and say, okay, maybe the other person has a view, will go on. But there's also this image of saying that, oh, every decision has to be agreed, everybody has to be on the same page all the time. But actually, to grow a company, you need that difference. You need to be challenged by founders who have the same motivation and end result and goal in mind, right? I think that is a very important thing where you're saying we're all pulling for the same team. So if you're having that difference, it's actually healthy rather than saying, no, you shouldn't have conflict. Conflict is healthy if done the right way.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So now coming to a couple of other things I wanted to speak about, right? You've been a leader in fintech and crypto as a woman for over a decade now. Not an easy space necessarily, fin plus tech, where diversity is a challenge. But what has been your experience as a woman founder and as well as a fintech leader over the last few years? How have you navigated it, and what are the changes you're seeing when it comes to, say, the diversity element?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel that there is more diversity in fintech than there is in crypto, for sure.
Sure.
That would be the first point. Like from I would say investment perspective, definitely there is an accent on investment in women co-founders. So that we have received a warm welcome when it comes to that, and we have had even VCs that are supporting women entrepreneurs initiatives to that can be around the education, around different parts. So we have received this kind of support and benefits. Do I see kind of a difference all through my career? But it doesn't change anything that I'm. What I mean is that it's not. I actually feel it's better as a woman entrepreneur, as a young woman when in finance. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Back 15 years ago. But what's true is that we are still very much underrepresented, and that to see more women in the space as entrepreneur, I think it starts with kind of education, but also by probably having initiatives that push them to take the leap, because maybe some of us are a bit less risk adverse in general, families to take care of, and that puts you in a situation where in the end becoming an entrepreneur can seem very challenging. But also like a last trait that is very much seen. I believe there's some data around that, like, you know, when you don't fill all the job description, women don't apply. Correct. While the men, if they feel stick like 10%, like they do apply and they get the job. And it's kind of like probably the same thing here, where you're just like, why wouldn't you be able to be an entrepreneur? Yeah. Oh yeah, but because no, like, so that's the reason why I think it's initiatives to support like women to take the leap are very important.
What would you tell budding women entrepreneurs or women in fintech and crypto who are looking towards going and maybe they see a problem? What would you tell them what they should do, and what are the positives of getting into entrepreneurship for them?
I mean, if you are already wondering, it means you have it. If you don't do it, you will regret it. I waited more than 10 years, even more, like almost 15 years before taking the leap. I believe I wished I had done it earlier. So just go and do the things that scare you. Because actually it's going to be super rewarding. And the truth is that if you don't do things in your life that are scary, I have the feeling that you're wasting it a little bit.
Okay, fair. I think go do what scares you. You will enjoy it eventually, right? It's like watching a very good horror movie, but with a positive ending. Yes. And we'll come to that as well we're here, both of us here visiting for the Dubai FinTech Summit organized by DIFC, but a very strong fintech ecosystem. The MENA FinTech Association has been doing fabulous stuff. You have Safety doing stuff here today as well. How has your experience been in Dubai FinTech Summit? But broadly, you know, what are your thoughts on the region, the MENA region, when it comes to both fintech and digital assets?
Yeah, so I have been really impressed by the Dubai FinTech Summit. I believe that I didn't expect so much diversity, people coming from everywhere to the summit, showing that actually Middle East is becoming a very hot place when it comes to fintech and crypto. What I have really also liked is that everybody's in the room, and it really makes me think of the early days in London, like 15 years ago, where you have, I mean, there were the regulators, there were the central banks, the fintechs, the banks, the tech providers. Everybody was here. So you see that people are around, want to make things happen, want to be all at the same table to actually move things forward. What I have also seen is that, like, it's really easy to connect with everybody around, and it's also the same feelings as back in London. London was really well known because just by walking in the city, you were like with the regulator, the banks, everything. It's not the same scale because here it's across the region, but it feels very much the same. That's like everybody is really accessible. When it comes to fintech, we're seeing very large ones implementing here, but it's the same for crypto. Regulations coming all across the Middle East, showing that actually, like, the market is definitely ripe for disruptions. And having talked to several fintech founders, coming from, for example, Saudi, like UAE, etc. The traction of the fintech products they are launching is massive. And I really have the gut feeling that we are about to experience in the Middle East what we have experienced in Europe back then. And like, it's ready, and it's the time to make it happen is now.
Perfect. It's an exciting time to be in the Middle East and in Asia, tailored to each market, but broadly very positive when you're looking to approach. Sophie, it's been a pleasure and fabulous. Thank you so much for giving us so much insight, speaking from your heart, as it were.
Thank you, Michelle.
And lovely having you again. So stay tuned to Finstep Asia Edge as we delve and meet more entrepreneurs and thought leaders in the Web 2 to Web 3 space, bridging Web 2.5, right? And she is Web 2.5 and owns the domain as well. So that's where we are ending. Thank you again for joining us, and thanks again, Sophie.
Thank you, Musheer.
Thank you.